Our reading this morning is going to come out of Exodus chapter 1. We'll be reading verses 15 through 21. Again, that's Exodus 1, verses 15 through 21. This comes after the end of Genesis. A new king had arose and didn't know Joseph, and they were concerned about the rise of the Hebrew people. We'll be reading from the NASB. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. One of them was named Shiphrah, and the other was named Puah. And he said, "When you are helping the Hebrew women to give birth, and see them upon the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall put them to death. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live." But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but let the boys live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing? And let the boys live." The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwives can get to them." So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very mighty. Because the midwives feared God, he established households for them.
Family. He was a mighty Pharaoh. They were midwives. Do you remember their names yet? Puah, you got that one. Shiphrah and Puah. They're known because God wanted us to know of one thing. They feared God and chose to follow his will beyond anything else. Now, I'd like you to kind of take that little bit of history and grab hold of that this morning, because that's going to be something of the background of where we're going. My job this morning is to give you a State of the Union address. It's okay. I'm not going to follow Trump. It will not be the longest State of the Union address in presidential history like his was. Mine is rather limited by time. But we are going to travel from Western Asia all the way to the east and back up to the center of Asia this morning. I hope you have a pair of tennis shoes on, because we're going to travel rather quickly. My job this morning is to let you know what's going on in Asia. I'm the Dean of Ministry Training for Asia. So my interest and my heart is with the people who are there. And I get to tell you this morning of some pharaohs and of some midwives, both who are very much at work. I'm going to begin this morning in India. Recently, I was blessed to be a part of a team who went and in 4 major cities was able to meet with folks from 4 different schools of ours, from 2 completely different languages, and to watch as in the midst of this Hindu culture pull from our brothers in Christ and have a faculty that is not only native but very active part of those schools and the outreach all over India. It was exciting for me to see that not only are they doing a good job in the schools that are there, but they have a heart for reaching out. For instance, right now at this very moment, they are setting some foundations for a brand new residential program east of Hyderabad, where we'll be able to minister in a residential way, just like we do here, in a way that students can come and spend time for the first time, not just on weekends, not just in the evenings, but come and stay and learn and grow and mature. I can tell you about another discussion that's begun where there in Bangalore, where we already have one school in one language, we've got someone else now who's wanting very much to use that facility and those resources and begin a brand new school in a brand new language among the people there in India. I want to tell you about the city of Cochin, where we not only have a brand new school, but this year we got to participate in an area-wide leadership program where they brought over 170 folks to one place, and we were able to talk to them about leadership. The amazing thing was not that we were able to be there, but the excitement in those who were in those rooms, the sense that there was something for them to do, and they were there because they were devoted to the cause of Christ and to making sure that leaders in India were doing what they were doing in the best way possible for the sake of the kingdom. They were serious about being there. We came away from our sharing time with them not proud of ourselves for what we had accomplished, but proud that God was able to take this culture and in the midst of that culture raise up these people who are midwives, who are fully devoted, fully committed. Let's jump over to China, where in China the pharaohs are strong, where Christianity is actually legal in China within certain bounds. For instance, you are able to preach about Christ in China, but as long as you don't call him Lord. If you call him Lord, you'll be taken from the pulpit and many times actually shipped out of the country. Because there is only one Lord in China, and that's the Pharaoh. China. We know that there are probably over 100 of our own brethren meeting in house churches all over China. But we don't know exactly what that number is because most of them are meeting behind closed doors. Most of them are afraid every time they meet that while they're meeting, somebody is going to knock on the door. And I could tell you a dozen stories of churches that have been closed down or forced to move because there were too many people meeting in a house, or they got just a little bit too loud one Sunday morning in their singing, and somebody complained. And yet, underneath the Pharaoh's power, I can tell you that those folks are meeting as midwives. We currently have at least 2 different places where, based on resources and details being worked out, we have the opportunity for 2 schools. 2 opportunities where everything in place and God at work, we're going to be able to see a group of both Western and native Christians working together to create a training opportunity for those who are within China. The Pharaoh's not going to win that battle either. Let's go to Cambodia, where communist influences are the Pharaoh still at work in Cambodia. I'd like you to go with me to Phnom Penh, where Rich and Rhonda Dolan have been there for a number of years, where Dan Wilson, who's back there, and others who've traveled in and out of Cambodia now for many years. They are the midwives. They are the ones who are getting together with those local natives, and they are working very diligently to create an opportunity for growth. Recently, speaking with Rich and Rhonda, the Pharaoh that they're facing right now is students, the need for students. Again, pulling in those from that community has been tough. And pulling in students who are willing to go back into ministry in their local communities, it's tough finding those because they find the opportunity to come to the city and be blessed in the education that the Dolans and others are offering, and they want to stay. So finding students who are willing to go back and to be committed to the cause of Christ in their own individual communities. You see, money, opportunity, resources, that's the Pharaoh in that community. And yet there are those who are the midwives who are struggling in spite of those it's hard to explain, talking to those students when we were there, and to hear the advantage they want to take of those few resources that they have, and how difficult it is for them to decide to go back to the village. That may not make sense to us because we have so much. And yet, there are those who are going. And the gospel is spreading. Let's jump over again to Myanmar. We don't yet have a school in Myanmar. There the Pharaoh is the Buddhist influence, where Christianity has been demonized because of the government's influence and because of the Buddhist influence. Christianity is actually, those who are in Christianity, in Christian walks, are considered demons. And Christianity as a whole is demonized, and to be a part of the Christian walk in that country, you are an enemy not only of the Buddhist religion, but you're an enemy of the people because of history that took place about 40 years ago, where Christians were used by the government to kill Buddhists. Several hundred, in fact, were killed using Christians as the gun, as the opportunity. That's the Pharaoh. And yet there are midwives. Once again in Myanmar, God is at work. Where the greatest influence for Christianity anyway is going to come from denominational churches, the Christian church, the Baptist church in the north. Do you know we have a Church of Christ school in the midst of Myanmar that's been there for over 25 years? But also in the midst of a Buddhist population, their student body has been small, and they've been struggling all those years. The Pharaoh is strong. Over half of the churches of Christ we know of in Myanmar are instrumental. Influenced by denominationalism, influenced by those schools in the north that are the greatest Christian influence they have. We need to raise up midwives in the south who are willing to stand for the truth and are willing to stand for what matters most. Let's jump to Vietnam. Another country influenced by the Pharaoh of communism, the Vietnam War. There are a good number of churches in Vietnam. In fact, I know personally of, in one area of Vietnam, there are 4 generations of Christians in the southern part of Vietnam. I can tell you that there are over 100 churches of Christ in Vietnam. But I can tell you that those churches are far too dependent on Western influence. They're so dependent on Western money. Most of those brethren do not get along one with another because there's jealousy over who has more money and who has more resources and who has more opportunities. They need some midwives. Those who are going to stand on the truth for what the truth is, and they're not going to be caught up in the resources, not going to be caught up in the money and the opportunities. I can tell you about Hong An and Huang, a couple that, thanks to the school in Singapore, graduates went home to Vietnam after they graduated, and within 3 years had baptized over 80, had planted at least 4 churches, and that number's probably closer to 6 if my count is right. And Hong An and Huang have, through some of those resources that have been offered them, have already built the building ready for training young leaders all over Vietnam. But because of circumstances in Vietnam, Hong An and Huang are now in the country here, furthering their education so that when they do go back, their education would be approved by the government and they would be able to run that school in a way that glorifies God the best. Pray for Hong An and Huang. And those of you who know them are going to rejoice because they're doing so well. They are, in that country, they're midwives because of the fear of the Lord. Let's go to the Philippines, the only country listed in all of Asia as Christian. There are thousands of islands, hundreds of dialects. I'll have to ask June how many dialects there are. I just know there's a bunch. I know that English is a common language. They also have their common Philippine language, and people are able to get up and to move around that country well. Catholicism, in general, is the Pharaoh there, where Christianity is accepted, and yet the persecution that does exist in the Philippines comes primarily there, unless you're in South, in the Mindanao area, and then it's Islam. The midwives, they're active. Ask Brian and others who are about to embark on the next phase of our outreach through solar players all over that part of the world. Ask June Fuentes and others about those who have plans to go into the Philippines and to train leaders and to be a part of local congregations that are struggling, like many local congregations, with handfuls of families meeting together, looking for some sort of direction, looking for some sort of opportunity to grow. I can tell you of some midwives up north in Tuwau who are ready to start a brand new school for us, but focused primarily on one-on-one discipleship, focused on getting together down in the dirt, in the rice paddies of the villages out in northern Philippines, who are going to be working with in situations where they will work side by side with those that they're training, those that they are teaching, so that they can work side by side with others in the fields. There are midwives there in the Philippines. Let's go to Malaysia, where public training and evangelism is actually illegal, at least by Christians. Where carrying a Bible in certain parts of Malaysia will not only get you arrested, but perhaps even beaten and thrown in jail. Where persecution is sometimes violent. Crosses are burned, churches are destroyed. Yet, even there, God is at work. Kuala Lumpur. The government in Kuala Lumpur offered one of the local preachers, local congregation, offered them a building for the price of taxes. All they had to pay was taxes. For about $100,000, they were given a 5-story, I forget how many square feet, but a brand new building in the midst of Kuala Lumpur, a place where they already have plans to train, already have plans to have leadership courses and to bring people from all over Malaysia who are willing to hear the gospel meet behind doors where the government has given them an opportunity to teach. The Pharaoh will not win that battle. Let's drop down to Singapore, where the school in Singapore is doing wonderful, where they are the financial and educational hub of all of Southeast Asia in many ways, where the government has an open door policy and allows people from all over that part of the world to come to Singapore for long and short term and are able to come and study because of that. Though it's a democratic monarchy, they're very proud of their influence, proud of the outreach that they have in that part of the world. And because of that, the government, the Pharaoh, is willing to allow them to come, the students to come to the school there. Now, the Pharaoh in part is the government, but also Pharaoh there is materialism, because it is the financial hub of Southeast Asia. Everything about the government's willingness to have everybody there is because of money. One of our greatest struggles, even with the school in Singapore, those who come are forced to live outside the village and outside their own culture because Singapore is such a westernized place. And being able to train these young men and young ladies to spread the gospel and to go home and be good disciples of Christ is a challenge there. Because materialism is the Pharaoh that they battle, even in Singapore, where Terry Harrison, who is now the dean of the school there, I think they're about to have their 7th graduating class, representing 9 students from 9 different countries in that part of the world. Isn't that exciting? The Pharaoh is not going to win that battle either. Let's drop down to Indonesia, where in Batam, Winston Bolt has been active in the school there for over 20 years, Winston, married to a native and working alongside a faculty, a very strong faculty of native teachers. That school is doing a wonderful job of sending trained men and women back into their villages, back into their cities, and able to walk alongside them and focusing now on a brand new way. They have changed their focus in the last year or so, and they are beginning to work also in a focus on one-on-one discipleship, working very diligently to realizing that some of the things they've done in the past weren't always working, and deciding that the way to do this is to get down with those who are the midwives, those who are willing to go back into their villages and work. And now they're going 2 by 2. They have a program where they are in school half a year, and half a year they are doing nothing but evangelistic discipleship type work in their local communities. They have found a way to overcome the Pharaoh. They are the midwives. Papua New Guinea, though it's a little bit outside the realm of Asia, we have a partnership with the Melanesian Bible College that's been there well over 20 years now, who has a brand new focus on training a new generation, because the young people in that country, they don't want to go to school and speak the local language. They are into English. And so the Melanesian Bible College has decided they are going to move from Pidgin to English. They sent a couple young men to Singapore who were trained and now graduated. And I got a note yesterday from Arthur, one of those students, and he's teaching his first class in English in the Melanesian Bible College. And they are now training young men and women all over Papua New Guinea who are coming there because they are one of the few places they can go and get any kind of training in English. But they are a part of a generation that I think are going to be midwives. There are, I don't have time, but there are still wild men of the forest who control the interior of that country. They are cannibals, they are headhunters, they still keep movement inside that country from going from one place to another. China, Korea, Europe, all are there right now in Papua New Guinea doing mining. And very, very quickly, the Pharaoh in that country is materialism, because everybody is bringing their money and trying for the opportunity to take advantage of the government and take advantage of the people. And at this very point, the Pharaoh is that money, that materialism, and that new desire that people have to take what is being offered them. And these few who are coming out of the Melanesian Bible College and other colleges in that area, they are going to be so important to keeping the focus on those who are in local work. And I hope that you will pray for them and keep them in your mind. I don't have time this morning to tell you more about Laos and about Hong Kong, about Taiwan, all places where I have contacts now and brothers and sisters in Christ who are looking for opportunities to grow, looking for opportunities in spite of their own pharaohs, are looking for opportunities to become midwives in one way or another in the communities that they live in. In Korea, I just got back, and it's exciting to see not only is the school there that we have still growing and still reaching out and still training young men and women, but they are breaking foundations in next month on a brand new building in the very heart of Seoul. A building that is going to allow them to have a residential program for the first time. A building that is going to be opening its doors on a daily basis and offering opportunities for folks off the streets to come in and into that setting be able to be trained. Now understand, the Pharaoh in Korea is a little bit different. The Pharaoh in Korea is denominationalism. It's a very Christian country. But there's so many different denominational influences. Even our own brethren in that country are being influenced by those from in the name of Christ and the name of Christianity are adding their voice to the materialistic view that is so often a part of Korea. The Pharaoh is strong, but God is stronger. We don't always remember Puah and Shifra. We don't always remember, even when we tell the children this little portion of the story, they don't always get named. I haven't given you a lot of names this morning. But I want you to know that the midwives are there. Pharaohs are strong, but God is stronger. I don't know how many of you are midwives this morning. I trust all of you are. You wouldn't be here. But I know some places where the Pharaohs are at work, and they're needing midwives. Those who, because of the fear of God alive and working in them, are willing to go and to be a part. Maybe you're one of those. Maybe you'd just like to ask a question or two. I know there's a people waiting. A whole part of the world where over half the world's population are located. They're waiting. I hope we can be a part of their journey. God bless.